woke, Zoo, social justice, modern day left-leaning American identity politics. It has many names. I'm pretty sure that most of you guys know what I'm talking when I'm referring to this. But today I want to touch on something very interesting that I see on the internet being misconstrued time and time again. And that is the fact that woke people do not have principles. And that is very far from the truth. They actually do have some strong principles, which you can find out if you read the academic papers. And most social justice activists, they inherently are aware that these principles exist, even though they probably have difficulty articulating them. So what are these principles? Well, there's two major ones. I would say number one is authenticity, and the other one is the progressive stack. So let's talk a little bit about the progressive stack first, which I believe is the pillar, the essence of the social justice movement, or the woke ideology we see today. And the progressive stack basically separates mankind into different subsections. These subsections are based on identities. So one of them is race, another one is gender, another one is the sexual orientation, religion, and based on these identities, you are then classified into a stack of people which can either be oppressors or oppressed. And it's like a pyramid, basically. At the top of the pyramid is always going to be the cisgender, heteronormative, straight white man. And as you go down the pyramid, you're going to find various people who are being oppressed, but at the same time, they're also being the oppressors. Like, for example, a Muslim man is being oppressed by the cisgender, straight, white, heteronormative, patriarchal male. But at the same time, he's the oppressor to someone less privileged than him under the stack, which can be a transgender Muslim woman. So, based on the position that an individual has within the stack, you have different sets of morality. And that is pretty much that anything is acceptable as long as you're punching up. So if you do something to a person which is on top of the stack, if you're acting in a way that is considered uncivilized, if you're acting in a way that's considered mean, even sometimes I would go to say and point out that it's cruel, social justice tolerates it. It's the entire principle is called regressive tolerance. So in other words, social justice as an ideology tolerates the behavior, sometimes even violent, of those that are considered to be underneath the progressive stack, while represses any type of behavior, even peaceful, by those considered to be on top of the progressive stack. And this is where you have the misconception that it's rules for thee but not for me. Because what is actually happening in a social justice system, so like a university campus, if you will, they do have a hierarchical structure, very similar to a medieval environment, where you have people born in nobility who are allowed to do certain things, and people who are being treated as peasantry who aren't allowed to do those things. So, for example, a noble can spit on a peasant, but the peasant can never spit on a noble, if that makes any sense. This is why they say stuff like people of color cannot be racist. It's the fact that it justifies any type of behavior that would not be acceptable if a person of non-color would do it, right? It would be something that would get that person fired, ostracized, but they want to create a system where the person of non-color cannot do those things, but the person of color can. I mean, there are rules, basically. There are principles. And you see this in Marxist ideology as well. In the Gulag Archipelago, it's being explained how the criminal would have been tolerated if he was found with a knife. Because the ideology would say that he grew up in a difficult environment, he doesn't know any better. But the same thing, that like the exact same thing, if it was happening against an intellectual, which was against the regime, he would be entirely persecuted for it. Like they would not hesitate to throw the book at them. Sometimes even for less crimes, right? It's like a different standard for the peasantry And like the peasantry need to know their place, and the aristocracy are allowed to do whatever they want. You give based on identity, you give rights to people. And it's based on like how you're born. Like, are you born in this particular group? Then social justice gives you more, right? Now it's important to point out, like, they will say, well, yeah, but like these people are marginalized or whatever. But if you look at the communist revolution, like before, the nobility were on top and the peasantry were on the bottom. But when the communist revolution comes up, they flip the thing, right? Like they reverse the wheel. And now if you happen to have any family members that were aristocrats, or if heaven forbid you were an aristocrat, you'd have been persecuted. The thing is that communism promises equality, so like it should break the wheel, but it doesn't. It just flips it around. And because the woke ideology, like critical theory, has a lot of elements borrowed from Marxist thought, it does the same thing. Like it looks at a wheel and then it just flips it around, and it creates different systems of oppression, but they just want to have like different people that are doing the oppression and different people that are being oppressed. Now, what's interesting is that the progressive stack isn't entirely fixed. What it means is that you can be a white man, which is the worst place to be on the progressive stack, but you can get a couple of points and you can get some wiggle room. So, for example, if you happen to identify as non-binary, like that counts as progressive points, or if you happen to be gay. But how do the activists test whether or not a person is genuine, right? Because if Donald Trump were to come up tomorrow and he would say that he identifies as a woman, they would laugh at it. Like they would not consider Trump to be like the first female Republican nominee, despite the fact that he would identify as such, because of the authenticity, right? So the Marxist theorists, the enlightened university professors at the academia, they believe that they have completely studied the human element, and they completely understand down to a T, down to a science, the way people behave from various identities. So they basically put everyone into a box. And if you happen to be black, for instance, then you're supposed to support Black Lives Matter, you're supposed to vote the Democrats, you're supposed to behave in a certain way that they deem to be authentic. The best example of this, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows, is at the peak feminism during 2016. If you were a woman who didn't believe that the patriarchy is oppressing everyone, and you didn't think that in the United States there is a rape culture, and 1 out of 5 women are being raped, or whatever statistic they would push, if you didn't believe that, they would say that you have internalized misogyny. So in other words, the societal structures, they are so powerful at brainwashing people that despite the fact that this is a woman, she is being brainwashed, so she does not have like the authentic experiment, and because of that, you cannot have diversity by putting women like her in positions of power. This is why Gina Carano, for example, despite being a woman, despite Disney championing enlightening minority voices and wanting to have like more women speaking out and whatnot, they fired Gina Carano because she wasn't authentic, right? Like, if you have a person like the actress that plays Captain Marvel, which is antagonistic towards the fans, which is attacking the fans, she is being promoted because she is being viewed as authentic. Like she has the authentic feminist experience that Disney is trying to elevate. Meanwhile, someone like Gina Carano, which is beloved by the fans, which a lot of fans like, due to the things that she is saying, which are considered to be unauthentic, she is a problem maker. She needs to be fired and get rid of. She needs to be canceled. So it's important to understand that these are the major principles of social justice, or woke ideology, or whatever you want to call it. Critical theory has different names. But they do have these principles, and they inherently know them. Like, it's very interesting when you see... I forgot if I mentioned it in the video or not, but it's very interesting when you see... at a rally or at a protest, you have like a social justice activist, like a lady, for instance, and she's very opinionated, she's very aggressive, she speaks her mind, and she gets challenged by a person which is white. And immediately she's like, oh, well, I have privilege. The moment that person says, I'm trans, they're like, boop. Right? Like, they immediately know their place. And they're like, well, I don't want to be labeled a TERF. I don't want other people to label me as a TERF. Like, okay, I'm sorry. Right? Especially if she believes that the person is authentically trans. Like, if they're genuine in their belief, then that person projects power. Right? And this is only in the social justice worldview. Like if you try to do this in Eastern Europe, it wouldn't work. But if you try to do this in California, if you try to do this in Portland, if you try to do this at the university campus, well, because the ideology dominates the environment, right? Like the systems are benefiting this type of ideology, you get different results. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section.